Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Samantha Hunter, and I work in the Policy Office at the National Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to the Fall 2021 NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I am now pleased to present the session covering the role for Director for Education and Human Resources. This session will be presented by Dr. Michael Ferrara, a Program Officer in the Division of Undergraduate Education. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Ferrara. I'm a program director in the Division of Undergraduate Education here in the EHR Directorate. And I'm going to go through the entire slate of our EHR programs with you over the next hour or so. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. Next slide. So EHR has a very broad mission because STEM and STEM education are very broad in the United States. So our mission verbatim is to develop a diverse and well-prepared U.S. STEM workforce and STEM literate public by supporting excellent research and development in STEM education. Now, of course, that's intentionally broad and it covers a lot of different areas, as you'll see from the real amazing diversity of programs we're going to discuss today. So some big themes. We're interested in STEM learning and learning environments. We're interested in broadening participation and building institutional capacity for research and education. And we're interested in STEM professional workforce development. Next slide. Underneath those three broad umbrellas, there are a number of persistent, vexing issues in STEM education. This slide one slide could not possibly capture all of them, but just some examples. We're interested in trying to mitigate disparities and persistent inequities. We're interested in grappling with artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies so that we can push forward and hopefully transform the work that we do in STEM teaching and learning. We really would like to make sure that the curricula that our students engage in are aligned with the actual work that's being done and will be done in the future. And we really want to understand the impacts of remote instruction and on all learners, which obviously has become incredibly important over the past year plus as we've grappled with the COVID-19 pandemic. Slide. So as you can see, this is a bit of a complex slide, so I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed. This is just a nice visual overview of all of the different programs that live underneath the EHR umbrella. We're going to just give a real high-level introduction to each of them, but this is sort of a nice visual, which kind of, if you come back and look at this in the recording, you'll be able to see which ones live within specific divisions and which programs cut across our divisions, and in some cases across the entire foundation. Slide. So I'm going to start, and the plan now is to go through a number of specific programs in our individual divisions here in EHR, and then we'll talk about some cross-cutting programs at the end. So first, I'm going to start with the Division of Research on Learning in Formal and Informal Settings, or DRL for short. DRL invests in the improvement of STEM learning for people of all ages, PK through college, by promoting innovative research, development, and evaluation of learning and teaching across all STEM disciplines in both formal and informal settings. Slide. So before I start going through, I just want to highlight a few things. Each program will have one slide with just some, again, high-level points. And so just a couple of key things that I'll highlight here on this first slide before I talk about the ASIL program. So first, highlighted there is the solicitation number. You can always use your favorite search engine to look for either the program name or the solicitation number. That should take you to the most updated NSF website. Which has a ton of information. Slide. And if you look down at the bottom left corner of each slide for a program, there's a direct link to our internal website, which has the solicitation announcements, generally a list of NSF staff or contact information if you're interested in learning more about the program. And that's important. These programs are very rich and have a number of different facets. And so I hope to give you a high-level introduction. I really encourage you, if something strikes your fancy today, to dig into those solicitations and to reach out to my colleagues, or in some cases me, if it's a program that I work on, to learn more about the program. So slide. So without further ado, our first program, the ASIL program, Advancing Informal STEM Learning. So the goals of the ASIL program are to advance new approaches to and evidence-based understandings of the design and development of STEM learning opportunities for the public in informal environments. So informal environments generally mean outside of the traditional classroom. So we'd like to provide multiple pathways for broadening access to and engagement in STEM learning experiences specifically in these informal settings. We'd like to advance innovative research and assessment of STEM learning in informal environments. And we'd like to engage the public of all ages, from our youngest citizens to our oldest citizens, in their learning and engagement in informal STEM environments. The program invites 6 different types of projects. And again, I encourage you to go to the solicitation for more specifics. Pilots and feasibility studies, research and service to practice, innovations and development, broad implementation, literature reviews, syntheses or meta-analyses, and conferences. Slide. Up next is the Computer Science for All program. And as you might expect from the title, the goal is to provide all U.S. students the opportunity to participate in computer science, or CT is computational thinking education, at the K-12 level. And there's a dual focus for the program. We're interested in looking both at research and at research practitioner partnerships. So there's a number of different constituencies and strands here, interested in looking at high school teachers and preparing and or providing professional development for high school teachers that are looking to teach rigorous CS courses. That's a growing need nationally. Also K-8 teachers. We'd like to see support the development of instructional materials and the preparation that K-8 teachers need to integrate computer science or computational thinking into their teaching. We're interested in providing schools and districts the resources they need to define and evaluate pathways in computer science and computational thinking. And we are very interested in research about teaching and learning of introductory computer science. Slide. Up next is another program that's pretty broad, the Discovery Research Pre-K-12 program, or the DRK-12 program, as it's more commonly referred to. So the goal is to significantly enhance the learning and teaching of STEM fields by pre-K through 12th grade students and teachers through research and development of innovations and approaches. And this is, again, a very broad program. Awards are made across all different facets of formal, so this is generally in-school, traditional classroom-facing pre-K to 12 STEM education. There are 3 major strands in the program: assessment, learning, and teaching. And there are a number of priority areas listed in the solicitation. Again, I encourage you to look there, but some that I'd like to highlight include early childhood STEM education, teaching in statistics and data science, teaching and learning and assessment in statistics and data science, and quite like our previous program, integrating computing and computational thinking across the pre-K to 12 curriculum. Slide. Up next is the ITEST program, Innovative Technology Experiences for Students and Teachers. And again, as the title indicates, this is a real technology-facing program. So the goal broadly is to advance educational innovations that motivate and prepare, again, pre-K to 12 learners for computationally intensive industries of the future. So there's 5 design elements that cross-cut the program. There's interest in innovative use of technologies, innovative learning experiences, STEM workforce development, strategies to broaden participation in computationally intensive industries and the education that leads to them, and strategic partnerships that speak to the theme of the program. Slide. Up next is the REDL program, Research on Emerging Technologies for Teaching and Learning. This program looks to fund exploratory and synergistic research in emerging technologies. Now, that includes, but is certainly not limited to, AI, robotics, and immersive or augmenting technologies, augmented reality, things of that type. And the goal is to leverage those technologies to determine how we can support teaching and learning into the future. So projects can focus on learning, teaching, or fusion of both. Obviously, a lot of times those things overlap. Again, the exploratory word in the goal is critical. So projects should be exploratory and experimental. The program is specifically interested in those that are risky and potentially transformative. High risk, high reward is another phrase that we use frequently. The program envisions really well-formed cross-disciplinary teams that approach teaching and learning technologies with a number of different disciplinary perspectives, but also, as is always important, scientific rigor. Okay, so again, some areas of special interest, but you're encouraged to look at the solicitation, looking at diverse learner and educator populations, context and content, which includes teaching and learning in STEM and in foundational areas that enable STEM. And so again, quite broad, but important areas of emphasis. Slide. So moving on to our next division in EHR, the Division of Undergraduate Education, which is my home division. DUE looks to strengthen STEM education at 2- and 4-year colleges and universities by improving curricula, instruction, laboratories, infrastructure, assessment, diversity of students and faculty, and collaborations. Slide. So the first program that we'll discuss in DUE is the ATE program, or Advanced Technological Education. This is focused on educating highly qualified technicians, science and engineering technicians, for advanced technology fields that are so critical for driving the national economy. The ATE program is specifically focused on institutions of higher education that award 2-year degrees in advanced technology fields. And there's an expectation that these institutions are authentically involved in the project so that those IHEs and their faculty have significant leadership roles on all projects. A lot of different things that can be supported by ATE projects: curriculum development, professional development of faculty and teachers, career pathways, and many other activities. Slide. Up next is what's often viewed as the signature program within DUE, the Improving Undergraduate STEM Education, IU's EHR program. IU's is a very broad program. It promotes novel, creative, and transformative approaches to generating and using new knowledge about undergraduate STEM teaching and learning. And the program really has 2 main tracks: the Engaged Student Learning track, which, as the name might indicate, focuses on design, development, and research that involves tools, resources, and models for undergraduate STEM education. And then the other track is the Institutional and Community Transformation track, which is focused on applying and studying evidence-based practices that improve undergraduate STEM education and research, specifically in the context of organizational change and how organizational change occurs. Slide. Up next is the NSF Scholarships in STEM program, or the STEM program, which is one of our scholarship programs in DUE. You'll notice here it says that the solicitation is under revision, so we encourage you to keep an eye on the website for more information as that new solicitation is prepared, a revised solicitation is prepared. So, obviously financial aid alone is not the answer to increasing retention and graduation challenges in STEM. And so STEM provides funds to award scholarships, but also to adapt, implement, and study evidence-based curricular and co-curricular activities. Ultimately, the focus of the program is on low-income students, and the program wants to increase the number of low-income students who graduate and contribute to the American innovation economy through their STEM degrees and their STEM knowledge. Slide. Up next is the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program, or the Noyce program as it's referred to. This project is aimed at providing scholarships and stipends to support the recruitment, preparation, and retention of highly effective elementary and secondary mathematics and science teachers and teacher leaders, specifically in high-need school districts around the country. So this supports also, beyond the scholarship and stipends tracks, exploratory studies and research projects that address STEM teacher effectiveness and retention in high-need districts and settings. Additionally, funding can be requested to support STEM research experiences and opportunities for pre-service and in-service STEM teachers. Slide. So next, I want to talk about one of our newer program descriptions, which has an ongoing deadline, which is a little bit different than some of our programs. But as you can see, there is a next target date. And again, as with all of these programs, I encourage you to look at the website, which is linked down in the bottom left, or to search for the program description number. So this program description is interested in advancing innovation and impact in undergraduate STEM education at two-year institutions of higher education. So again, this is centered on STEM education at two-year institutions. So some outcomes of interest include making systemic improvements in STEM education, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, mitigating the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on two-year colleges. And as you can find, there are other potential outcomes that would also be appropriate for this call. For instance, there's interest in projects that look to advance undergraduate STEM education by improving student outcomes in foundational courses, broadening or even creating new STEM curricula, providing students with authentic research experiences or other experiential learning opportunities, including internships, increasing access to high quality STEM education through new technologies, reskilling or upskilling incumbent workers for new STEM jobs, building career and transfer pathways that really smooth the transition from two-year institutions into four-year institutions of the workforce, and developing novel mechanisms to identify talent and recruit students into STEM programs. In all cases, the NSF is interested in projects that have really authentic, substantive public-private partnerships that contribute towards advancing STEM education. Slide. Moving on now to our third division in EHR, the Division of Graduate Education. DGE looks to provide funding to support graduate students in the development of novel, innovative programs to prepare tomorrow's leaders in STEM fields. Slide. Up first is one of the oldest and most well-established programs at the Foundation, the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. You'll notice there are two websites listed down below. There's a lot of wonderful information at those sites that discuss this program. But the GRFP funds 5-year fellowships that include 3 years of financial support for graduate students who are or will be pursuing research-based master's and doctoral degrees in eligible fields of study. There's no postgraduate service requirement, and the current annual stipend is $34,000 with an additional $12,000 to be applied towards the cost of education at the student's institution. And again, this program cross-cuts all of the disciplines that the NSF funds and has been around for quite some time. Slide. The Innovations in Graduate Education program, or IGE program, supports piloting, testing, validating potentially transformative approaches to STEM graduate education, another very broad program open to any types of innovations that folks might come up with. Projects generate the knowledge base or contribute to the knowledge base required for customizing, implementing, and more broadly adopting transformative improvements. And projects address both workforce development and institutional capacity building in graduate education. And as was the case in some other programs, strategic collaborations are always encouraged. Slide. The NSF NRT program, NSF Research Traineeship Program, encourages the development of, again, potentially transformative models for inclusive STEM graduate training in high priority fields of convergent research. We're really interested in where disciplines come together, and specifically in areas of high need and high priority. Projects will, develop a whole bunch of skills and competencies for research-based master's and PhD students. And the idea is that these will come together to help these students pursue all different types of critical STEM careers. And once again, proposals that involve strategic collaborations are encouraged. Slide. Next is another one of our NSF scholarship programs, the Cyber Corps, or Scholarships for Service program, often abbreviated SFS. So this grants awards to institutions of higher education to provide scholarships to undergraduate and graduate students who are specifically pursuing degrees and training in cybersecurity. So this aligns with a critical U.S. strategy to develop a superior and robust cybersecurity workforce. This is a large priority right now. And after graduation, scholarship recipients are required to work for a federal, state, local, or tribal government organization in a cybersecurity related position for an amount of time equal to however long they received support from the scholarship program. So there is a service requirement there. Slide. Staying within the broad domain of cyberspace, let's look at the Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace, or SATC program. So this program accepts certain proposals, in specifically the EDU proposals that I'll discuss in a moment at any time. So that's a notable difference from some programs. But this program is looking for proposals that broadly address cybersecurity and privacy, and draw on expertise in one or more of the following areas: computing, communication and information sciences, engineering, education, mathematics, statistics, and possibly social, behavioral, and economic sciences. There are a lot of different disciplines that can make really important contributions to these broad areas of cybersecurity and privacy. There are 3 different designations, and submissions need to come in tagged for one of these designations. The first is the core, which is the main focus of the SATC research program, which covers the broad interests of the directorates of computing and information science, engineering, computer and information science and engineering, the Directorate for engineering, mathematical and physical sciences, and social, behavioral, and economic sciences. There's also the TTP, transition to practice designation, which is used to label proposals that are focused on transitioning existing research results into practice. And then the third designation is the one that sticks most closely to the mission of the EHR Directorate, which is the EDU designation, which would be used to label proposals that focus entirely in the domain of cybersecurity education. Slide. Okay, moving on to our 4th and final division within EHR, Human Resources Development. HRD looks to support and promote activities that seek to strengthen STEM education for underserved communities, broaden their participation in the workforce, and add to our knowledge base about programs of inclusion. Up first is the advanced program, which is short for increasing the participation and advancement of women in academic, science, and engineering careers. So the advanced program is focused on awards that are looking to address the systemic gender-based inequities that impact STEM faculty, and to really bring evidence-based systemic change strategies to bear to help mitigate, eliminate, work against these inequities and find solutions. In addition to the link that's in the bottom left corner, the advanced program has a really robust website with a lot of information. So I encourage you to take a look at the advanced website. I'll also note that the next deadline that is coming up is a letter of intent deadline, which is a little bit different than a main proposal deadline. So that a letter of intent would need to be submitted prior to a full proposal coming into the program. And there's more information about that in the solicitation. Slide. The AGEP program, or Alliances for Graduate Education and the Professoriate, looks to increase the number of historically underrepresented minority faculty in STEM, which really seeks to advance and enhance systemic factors that support equity and inclusion, and again, look to mitigate systemic inequities in the academic profession and the academic workplace. So the alliances that are funded by the program look to promote equity and the professional advancement of doctoral candidates, postdoctoral researchers, and faculty in STEM academic careers. Slide. The CREST program, or Centers of Research Excellence in Science and Technology, has a number of different strands, and there are multiple deadlines for that program. So please do refer to the solicitation for the different times that different strands are accepting proposals. But broadly, CREST looks to provide support to enhance the research capabilities of minority-serving institutions through the establishment of centers that effectively integrate education and research. So there are the CREST Center Awards, the HBCU RISE track, Historically Black Colleges and Universities Research Infrastructure for Science and Engineering track, and the CREST Postdoctoral Research Fellowship, or PRF track. Slide. The HBCU UP program, or the Historically Black Colleges and Universities undergraduate program, has several different missions. It looks to support the development and implementation and also the study of evidence-based innovative models and approaches to help prepare HBCU undergraduates for the STEM workforce. It also looks to bolster STEM faculty research capacity and to provide professional development. And it encompasses broadening participation research in STEM education, which obviously incorporates a lot of different potential directions and areas of inquiry. Slide. Up next is the Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, or LSAMP program. LSAMP looks to transform STEM education to support African American, Hispanic American, American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, and Native Pacific Islander students. This is accomplished through a number of different tracks and strands. There's opportunities to look at innovative, evidence-based recruitment, retention, and graduation strategies. There's opportunities to enable successful transfer of students from 2-year to 4-year institutions through the Bridge to the Baccalaureate track. Opportunities to increase undergraduate access to high-quality research experiences through REUs. And the opportunity to facilitate seamless transition of students into graduate programs through the Bridge to the Doctorate track. Slide. So now I'd like to speak about a number of programs that cut across the either EHR or the entire NSF. So I'm going to start with NSF Includes, which stands for Inclusion Across the Nation of Communities of Learners of Underrepresented Discoverers in Engineering and Science. So this is the expressed mission of, expressed in the mission of the Includes program is the effort to enhance the U.S. leadership in discoveries and innovations focused on commitments to equity, inclusion, and broadening participation in STEM at scale. And there are really two main pillars, two main tenets within the Includes program. First is the effort to broaden participation in STEM at scale. So this is projects that focus on realizing systemic change at large nationwide scales. And also the development of collaborative infrastructure where organizations come together and sort of leverage their shared strengths and their distinct experiences and strengths to try to develop a shared goal and take part in reinforcing activities and then looking to measure and map progress and develop ways to communicate. And the idea is for there to be a strong potential of these projects to expand, be sustained, and to continue to grow again to a large scale across the nation. Slide. Up next is the TCUP program, which resides within HRD, so the Tribal Colleges and Universities program. So the TCUP program, like some of the other programs we've already discussed, has multiple deadlines and there's a lot of different really exciting tracks here for tribal colleges and universities. So I'll just go through them really quickly. So there's the Instructional Capacity Excellence in TCUP institutions, which looks at support for transformational STEM instruction and research. There's the Targeted STEM Infusion Projects, TSIP, which are similar but smaller in scale and impact, so similar to the ICE-TI projects. There's the TCUP for secondary and elementary teachers in STEM track, which is a newer track, which looks to extend TCUP institutions' research and instructional capacity to the K-12 domain. There are small grants for research, which will support either STEM or STEM education research. TCU Enterprise Advancement Centers, or T-Centers, which are looking to really move the needle at the institution that is hosting the center. Cyber infrastructure, health, assistance, and improvements track. So the idea here is to help institutions upgrade their cyber infrastructure so that they can meet the demands that would address, including virtual instruction, advanced computing, data science, especially dealing with large data sets and the like. So there's a preparing for TCUP implementation track, which looks to support activities that prepare an institution for implementation level projects. And then there are TCUP partnerships, which are support for collaborations that will improve TCUP institutions' instructional and or research capacity. Slide. Up next is the HSI program, which is another one of our cross-cutting programs that's jointly managed through the Division of Undergraduate Education and the Division of Human Resources Development. So the HSI program looks to enhance the quality of undergraduate STEM education at HSIs, increase the recruitment, retention, and graduation rates of all undergraduate students pursuing STEM degrees at HSIs. It looks to promote research on engaged student learning at HSIs and really to sort of help unpack what it takes to diversify and increase participation in STEM. It hopes to incentivize institutional or community transformation, and it hopes to also build STEM education research capacity at HSIs. Slide. So the career program, Faculty Early Career Development Program, is an NSF-wide program that looks at supporting early career faculty who are really have the potential to serve as exemplars, as academic role models in research and education, and to lead really those cutting edge advancements in the mission of their departments, organizations, disciplines. Career awards are single PI projects for 5 years, and the PI must meet specific eligibility requirements, including being an assistant professor, tenure track or equivalent. There's also a limitation on the number of times an individual can apply to the career program. I encourage anyone who's interested in career to take a look at the program solicitation. Everything is outlined there. An integration of research and education plan is required. Now, when submitting, any submitter is going to select another program that aligns with the overall proposal. So in EHR, it could be HR Core Research, IUs, DRK-12, many of the other programs we've discussed. It's not often widely known that STEM education researchers or that career awards are made through EHR, but we want to really get the word out that early career faculty, this is a wonderful opportunity to engage with EHR and to really push your research programs forward. And as one thing, career submissions to EHR strongly recommend advisory boards as part of the evaluation structure. Slide. Another cross-cutting program within the EHR Directorate is the EHR Core program. There are 3 different tracks in the program. Track 1 specifically focuses on research on STEM learning and learning environments. That's, again, like many of our programs, quite broad, but it looks to build fundamental knowledge necessary to improve STEM learning in the many different places where that learning takes place. Track 2 focuses on research and on broadening participation in STEM. Again, supports fundamental research, investigating issues related to learning and participation of groups that have historically been underrepresented in one or more STEM fields, both at the individual level, but also looking at institutional factors. And then track 3 is research on development or STEM workforce development, which again focuses on fundamental research on STEM workforce development at any level of education, from K-12 through higher ed and the workplace. Slide. As another strand underneath the ECR umbrella, I'd like to talk a little bit about the BICSR program, Building Capacity in STEM Education Research. This is aimed at helping early and mid-career researchers acquire the skills they need to conduct fundamental research in STEM education. This funds research career development activities on topics that could be qualitative or quantitative in nature, research methods, study design, collection and analysis of new types of data, secondary analyses using existing data sets, data sets, meta-analyses, any of those types of activities. This complements the career program's mission and focus, looking again at early and in this case mid-career as well, professionals, and really welcomes proposals from mid-career faculty and other investigators from academic and non-academic organizations, including researchers with a doctoral degree that's not in education, but in a disciplinary STEM field outside of education, who want to pursue research in STEM education. But we also welcome applications from folks with doctoral degrees from an education research program who wish to complement or grow their expertise with training in a disciplinary STEM field to do some disciplinary-based education research. Slide. Another one of our program descriptions that was recently released, the Racial Equity in STEM Education, or EHR Racial Equity, or sometimes shortened to be the RE program. And the goal here is to support bold, groundbreaking, potentially transformative projects addressing systemic racism in STEM. So proposals should look to advance racial equity in STEM education and workforce development, both through research and practice. And the research can be fundamental research or applied research, and be led by or developed and led in authentic partnership with individuals and communities most impacted by the inequities caused by systemic racism. So again, strong, authentic partnerships where those partners have a real voice in the leadership of the project. A lot of different contexts that we're open to. Again, this is across the entire directorate. So we could be looking at pre-K to 12, 2- and 4-year undergraduate and graduate institutions, municipal organizations, the workplace, STEM workplace, and informal STEM context, which would include museums, community organizations, the media, things of that type. So a very broad program description looking at a very important set of issues for the STEM community. Slide. Through the end of the year, there is a Dear Colleague letter active that I'd like to highlight, looking at supplementing funding for postdoctoral researchers to mitigate the impacts of the ongoing pandemic on research career progression. So this applications are available on a rolling basis through the end of the year. Again, the solicitation outlines how best to make contact with a member of our staff. But this DCL would provide funds to support either a new postdoctoral researcher for up to 2 years, or to continue an existing postdoctoral appointment for up to 1 year. We really strongly encourage applications from PIs at institutions that have been particularly hard hit by the pandemic, or for PIs who are earlier in their careers or who are still actively looking to build their careers and who may have been particularly impacted by any slowdown resulting from the pandemic. This DCL does look at very specific programs, so we encourage you to please look at the document to see if a current award would apply, because not all programs are eligible. The postdoctoral researcher must hold a terminal degree at the time that the supplement is awarded. And they must also be engaged in mentored STEM research or STEM education research and development. So those are critical points about eligibility. Slide. So I just want to thank you again for spending this time with me and allowing me to give you just a very high level view at a number of our programs here in EHR. You know, I'm looking forward. Hopefully we'll have some time to answer some questions. I just want to emphasize, if anything has really grabbed your attention today, please take a look at those solicitations, and please reach out to some of the program officers or the other contact emails that are there to get more information. Although I will do my best to answer any questions you may have now as time allows. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for that, Michael. And now, because you are so excited to answer these questions, we're going to start throwing them your way. All right. So for DUE, can non-academic organizations like zoos, for instance, apply for any of these programs, or do you have to be an educational institution?
So that's a great question. There is a belief that only institutions of higher education or very narrowly focused groups can apply for our programs. for the most part, the applications are open to a lot of different types of institutions. The NSF PAPPG, which is sort of our external facing rulebook, gives a list of all the different organizations that are eligible to apply for NSF support. I will say, I know I said this a lot during the presentation, take a look at the solicitation. There are certain programs where you do have to be an institution of higher education. For instance, the scholarships in STEM program, because it's awarding scholarships to undergraduates or graduate students, that needs to be managed by an institution of higher education. But often, as long as you are meeting the mission of the program, it's really wide open to who is presenting.
Yes.
Proposing, I should say.
Proposing, yes. And to add on to that, yes, as long as the solicitation does not state an eligibility requirement, then the restriction is not there. So the solicitation would let you know if you are or are not eligible to submit to that program. Okay, and there was another one very similar to it. Are these grants typically focused on higher education, or could a high school or museum also apply? So that falls in line with what you just responded to. Okay. I'm a physicist by training. I have some research ideas on K through 12 STEM, specifically physics education. Would you recommend partnering with colleagues in psychology and education, for instance, as co-PIs when preparing a proposal?
In general, my answer would be yes. So I like to say that NSF is more often than anything else in the knowledge generation business. We want you to do cool things. We want you to explore your ideas, but we want the community to be able to learn from what you're doing. And that very often involves either rigorous evaluation, but even more so generally a strong research plan in education, the social sciences surrounding the work. And so it's very possible that, if you are a discipline-based education researcher, if you have training and expertise, the answer may well be no. But if that's not in your training or expertise at this moment, I would advise teaming up with some folks who are better positioned to put together a research and/or evaluation plan to go with your project. Now, I just want to say, as a slightly broader comment, you saw there's a lot of different pieces to the EHR programs, and that's not only true in EHR, but we really encourage you to think hard about the team you put together for pretty much any of these. Career is a single investigator program. There's a few exceptions, but in general, think about, what am I good at? What am I well positioned to do? And what are things that I want to do? And maybe other expertise would be helpful, and bring that team together. So it's not just in terms of the education, research, or evaluation. There's a lot of different pieces. Some of our most exciting programs really bring together folks with a lot of different perspectives and expertise. And that's where transformation often happens.
Okay, thank you. Are there any plans for supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in the DRL division? Also, can you share any information about the distribution of the types of organizations receiving funding? For example, universities, academic research organizations, nonprofits, et cetera, in each of the different programs.
So I would say DEI is already embedded in the DRL programs. Sometimes it's maybe not those exact words, but as for instance, I saw this question, I pulled up the DRK-12 solicitation, for instance, and it says, this is a sentence right from the description. The DRK-12 program especially welcomes proposals that are consistent with the goal of developing STEM talent and workforce from all sectors and groups in our society. Okay, so the words diversity, equity, and inclusion are not in that sentence, but it's right there. It's right in the middle of that. Now, also, we talked about, and there are similar phrases throughout many, if not all, of the programs that we saw. I want to highlight the new racial equity program. The program description that I talked about near the end is such an exciting opportunity that cross-cuts so many different possibilities. So I encourage folks who are interested in DEI, and that does lie across the entire directorate, to go take a look at that PD. The Includes program is absolutely amazing, foundation-wide. There's a lot of opportunities in DRL and in which DRL contributes, even if it's not strictly in that division, for you to think about and engage in that kind of work.
Okay, thank you. And can you please speak to funding for program evaluators? We run into this issue chronically. We need an evaluation mechanism, but professional evaluation is expensive if the project doesn't dovetail with an education researcher's own interests. How should we include professional evaluation in our budgets? And what is regarded as a reasonable range for costs on, say, a standard 3-year project?
Costs are, so I'll answer the last part first. That's really hard to say. It really depends who's conducting the evaluation. I understand that the more involved the evaluation plan becomes, the more expensive it can be. So let me talk about a few things around evaluation in general. There are folks that have put together in their proposals really tremendous. I mentioned advisory boards in terms of EHR career proposals, but a well-formed advisory board where you've got a good mechanism in the proposal for them to meet and give you feedback and for you to put that feedback into action for certain programs is a wonderful evaluation metric or evaluation mechanism, I should say. Another thing that sometimes when you're saying, boy, I don't know, I think this evaluator is doing the right stuff and has the right ideas, but it's expensive. A lot of times, so a common trap that folks fall into with EHR proposals is they think that research and evaluation are exactly the same thing. So those are distinct activities. However, they can reinforce each other and you can find some financial flexibility in that way. So the most common way we see people be creative about that is there's a stream of data coming in. You're collecting data that will allow you to look at research questions and drive forward knowledge, build new models, things of that type. But that same data stream also will allow you to take a look at how the program is moving towards its goals. Are your participants experiencing it the way you want? So if you feel like your budget's a little tight, one thing we look at is not to mash research and evaluation together. Conflating those often does not lead to happy panelists. However, looking for ways to have them share some of the data or some of the things that are coming in is a real good way to also find some space. I also realized I didn't answer the second part of the prior question, Samantha.
Okay.
So really quickly, so it's just a quick answer. I don't have data about exactly the breakdown of who is funded. However, a really wonderful resource is the NSF Award Search. It's a public award search. You can see every single award we have made, going back, I don't think full 76 years of the foundation, but going back pretty far. But you can search by program. That is it's something that if you have the capability, you can data mine. But I really do encourage anyone who's interested in a program, but is like, I'm not really sure if my idea fits, go to that award search, read some abstracts. You'll see, oh yeah, this really fits into this space well, or gosh, I'm not sure. But that award search can answer that question, but is also a wonderful tool for anybody out there who's exploring.
Okay, we'll have time for a couple more. So can you expand on what program officers like to see in terms of advisory boards for career proposals?
I think I'll say advisory boards for any proposal, right? Proposals often have a lot of different components. Some of them are, doing something applied and then building theory off of it. Some of them are strictly applied. Some of them are strictly theory. An important part of writing any good proposal is to break down the major parts of the idea and the work that's going to be done. So before you worry about your advisory board, if you feel like you've really framed out your work and what goes into it, that will serve as a great guidance for what an advisory board should be. Right? If you say, wow, I'm really interested, I'm a mathematician, so I'm really interested in the cognitive development of numeracy in fourth graders or in elementary school students, that's really critical to this work. And then there's no one on the advisory board that can sort of give you input about that, something's missing. So I advise that for any proposal that's going to use an advisory board, frame it out, find the major pieces, and then build an advisory board that will give you the advice and input you need to evaluate those pieces.
Okay, so we're going to continue to pick your brain a little. So can you talk to us, give us a few examples of what leads to a successful proposal? Like, what is it you look for truly in that proposal? You talked about an advisory board. Now let's talk about actually the proposal itself.
So, first of all, this is going to sound maybe overly simplistic. don't write proposals just because you want the NSF to write a check. Find the thing that you are excited about, figure out which program it fits into, because as you've seen, we've got a lot of them that cover a lot of ground, and write that proposal. Reviewers, program officers can tell when someone is excited and invested and engaged, and can tell when this was something that they did because a department chair, let's say, told them they had to. So that's the first thing. Write to the thing you care about. Something that's incredibly important, successful proposals allow reviewers and program officers to visualize what the project is going to do in their minds, right? So I like to sort of break down the review process into two pieces. Let's talk about the panel. So there's sort of a phase one. Panelists will read your review, read your proposal, and they'll sort of say, okay, if everything worked the way they claim it's going to work, would this be interesting? Would this make a contribution? What's interesting, if the answer is no, then fine, you'll get some feedback, and that's probably the end of the story. 75, 80, 90% of the time, the answer is yes, right? Folks don't send us ideas that, if they worked, would be bad ideas. So now we dig in. And, reviewers and program officers like to try to think about, boy, if this was happening at my institution, do I think it would work? Or if I was a faculty member engaged in this professional development, is this something that do I have enough to sort of feel like, wow, this would be great, this would be cool? Does my, so you have to give enough detail about why it's important and how it's going to work to grip the folks who are reading the proposal. Number one piece of feedback I write when having to turn away proposals is I needed more, reviewers or program staff needed more information about fill in the blank, because they said they were going to run workshops, but we don't know how long they are, or how often they're going to be, or how big they're going to be, or things like that, or any number of things like that. So be detailed enough within what you can afford in the 15 pages. The other thing is really pay attention to both intellectual merit and broader impacts and where those things intersect. As I said, we're in the knowledge generation business in the NSF, but we also, and this is really critically important in EHR, but I think it's true across all of our sister directorates as well. How is this going to impact society? How is this going to make a difference? We are at a point where education is so critical, and there are so many things that need to be done to support the next generation. If you don't talk about that in addition to the cool research you're going to do, you're going to have a tough road. So those are some general things. There's plenty more, but those are some big things.
Thank you. And can you tell me, do you find in your area, do you find there are programs that are in need of more or better proposals? Are there any areas that are kind of underrepresented in programs?
One of the things that we do as program officers is try to balance our portfolio. We try to do our best to make sure we're covering as much of the space as we can. This is where, again, that award search tool is really critically important. I could tell you some specific things about specific parts of the programs I work on. I don't know if that's really helpful here, but if you're within your field and you look at a program and you're like, wow, they don't seem to be talking about this at all, but I know the community is, that may indicate that there's a gap. And so you have to sort of do that analysis. Again, I don't advise writing to a gap unless it's a gap you're passionate about and have expertise in. Okay. But, overall, I think we do get a lot of tremendous proposals to all of the programs I've talked about. One of the things that is true, and I think people don't understand, we never gleefully say no to anyone, and we generally actually try to not say no. We like to think of it as not yet. We could have twice the budget and still be funding tremendous proposals. So, I think that there's twice as many still out there, probably many in this audience, that we would love to see. So I don't think we have specific gaps in programs. Of course, I don't have the full data right in front of me.
Okay. And one to a specific one, could you elaborate on the Advancing Innovation at Two-Year Institutions programs? Do you need a letter of intent for that one?
I do not believe that a letter of intent is needed for that. I would definitely, a good, so it varies by program, but a good idea is always to put together a one-page summary if you're not sure, and reach out to a program officer. If the program generally says, no, we don't, we want to make sure that everyone has exactly the same experience. Some programs feel that's important, but you'll often get feedback, at least saying this is a match or not a match for the program. Two-year institutions play a huge role in the way we educate undergraduates in this country, and that's what that program description is trying to get at. There are so many different things for students that, that's their terminal degree and they're going directly into the workforce, students that are going to transfer, students that come in with various levels of preparation that we want to make sure that we're serving and helping to get to whatever their final point is in the institution. That is such a broad PD. For those of you who have interest in the two-year space, I would really encourage you to take a look at it because there are a lot of opportunities there.
Okay, thank you. I want to point, this one is not a question, but it's a shout out to you, Mike, that when you said no, but you actually call it not yet. So they want to thank you for making that distinction. And that's something they think will be useful to their colleagues. So they will share that same sentiment. So thank you for that. Okay. And as we're closing now, do you want to quickly talk about how important it is to perhaps serve as a reviewer, proposers are serving as reviewers?
None of this happens without reviewers. Okay, we need your expert. It is not possible for programs to be experts in every possible thing that comes across our desk. You learn a lot in this job, but we need your expertise, and we spend a lot of time trying to match specific expertise to the panels that, and the proposals that are in front of us. So it is tremendous service to the country, to the disciplines that you work in. I'll also say, for those of you who are like, geez, I'm still mystified. It's still a little bit mysterious how the NSF works. Being a reviewer is one of the best ways to understand the process. To be able to see, every panel is different, but the conversations are not wildly divergent. Another thing, in addition to being a reviewer, I'll just very quickly throw out a commercial. There's never a bad time to think about being a rotator at the foundation. So I'm a permanent program officer. I made the decision to come here. Hopefully this is the last job I'll ever have. I love it. This is an amazing place to work. You work with some of the most dedicated, engaged, smart, fun people. It's unbelievable. Come spend 2 to 4 years with us. Learn about all these different things. Be part of the team. I've never met a person who regretted it, which is part of why I started on the road to working here in the first place. So that's another commercial. It was an unsolicited commercial, but I'll throw it in.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank Mike for joining us. And to everyone, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.